This meeting is being interpreted live in Spanish. To hear the meeting in Spanish, please call 508-924-5155. Again, the number is 508-924-5155. Please focus your attention on the screen to hear this announcement in Spanish.
Hay una línea telefónica simultánea disponible para las personas que desean escuchar la reunión de la Junta en español. Si desea escuchar la reunión en español, llame al 508-924-5155.
For those who are unable to observe now, the meeting is being recorded and can be accessed on the PGCPS YouTube channel for later viewing. Lastly, for recording purposes, the chairman reminds all board members to ensure that their microphones are turned on when speaking. Board Member Walker, please lead us in the board prayer.
O God, we pray to administer that which is just in all educational policies, being ever mindful of your guidance. Steer us to action with love, wisdom, and understanding. Amen.
Thank you so much. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. McMillan, please call the roll.
Dr. Anderful,
Present.
Ms. Boozer Strother,
Present.
Mr. Briggs,
Present.
Ms. Brown,
Here.
Ms. Goins McCants, present, Mr. Jongo, Dr. Moss,
Present.
Ms. Walker,
Present.
Mr. Jackson.
Thank you. A quorum is present. If there are no objections, the March 13th, 2025 meeting agenda will be adopted. Okay, there being no objections, the March 13th, 2025 meeting agenda is adopted. We're now going to move on to the public comment portion of the agenda. And I recognize the registered speakers for their public comments. Registered speakers have 3 minutes to make their presentations and may not relinquish any part of that speaking time. The board will recognize your comments but will not address them. Speakers may not address individuals or issues with profanity or derogatory terms. You will be warned once. If you continue, your comments will be muted and you may be removed from the meeting. Speakers are encouraged to use titles rather than names, for example, chair, board member, superintendent, principal, etc. There is one live speaker tonight, Ms. Kashia Jones. And she'll be speaking on standard operating procedures for cell phone policy, ban letters, and visiting your child's classroom in elementary school hours of operation. Okay, not seeing Ms. Kashia Jones, but I want to say that name one more time just to ensure. Okay, great, she's here. All right.
Hello, how are you?
Good evening.
Afternoon. My name is Kashay Jones. My son is Cash Missouri. He is 6 years old, a first grader. He attends Lake Arbor Elementary School right now. I'm here today, honestly, to talk about policies and SOPs. The 3 years my son has been in school, it has been very conflicting because it seems as though there are policies in place, but principals have the right to configure how much of a policy they want to abide to or not abide to in their school, correct? Not correct, if I'm not sure, but that seems to be what I've been up against. Is that?
Ms. Jones, we're not going to provide any feedback, but
answers.
continue to share your.
Okay. So during that, I've encountered what I feel is multiple issues attempting to advocate for my child. And when I say that, I mean when I walk in to question about policy, sometimes it's leniency because, okay, today is convenient for them to not abide. But on other days, this is Prince George's County Prince George's County Schools policies So it creates a conflict for me when I'm trying to advocate for my child in certain situations. I had a specified situation where I called the school about something and I used offensive terms. The terms led to a ban. That is an issue for me because I'm expected to send my child to a school, a building, a place where I'm not allowed to enter or call. In that process, the biggest issue has been getting it rectified. The process of that is when you email the people over top of the principal, you don't always get an email back. What they do is they reach out to the principal, figure out what happens between them. Then the principal may reach back out to you, or that person may reach back out to you. Then it's a bunch of he said, she said. It's nothing complacent of mediation or coming to a resolution. It's just you calling people all day, every day. This past month, I have spoken to Miss Bowie more times than I've spoken to my mother about this situation. And this is just for me to get in contact with Dr. Lassiter. And I understand you guys are busy with things above parents and you expect principals to handle things, but what happens when the principal can't handle it or isn't up to resolve it? Because they are people. Is that my time?
It is.
Okay, thank you so much.
But thank you so much for your testimony today. Okay, there were no written or pre-recorded comments, and so thank you again for the comments this evening. We're now going to move on to the presentation for this evening's Safe and Supportive Environments. And I want to recognize Superintendent House for the Safe and Supportive Environments presentation.
Thank you, Vice Chair. We're excited to share with you from the Department of Security and Safety Services just some updates and insights around exactly what it is that we're doing around safe and supportive environments. With us today, we have Director Gary Cunningham, as well as our Chief Operating Officer, Dr. Sharaska Coleman. They're going to get started and walk us through the presentation. Gentlemen.
Thank you so much, Superintendent House. So again, as Superintendent House shared, good evening, board members. Joining me this evening is Director Gary Cunningham for Safety and Security Services. Based on our most recent data comparison from July 1st to January 30th, from school year 2023-24 to July 1st to January 30th for school year 2024-25, we have experienced a significant reduction in the number of security incidents that have occurred in our schools. Tonight's presentation is focused on sharing the essential functions of the Safety and Security Services Department, how the department is organized, and areas we are looking to continue to improve upon. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Director Cunningham.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. Just to give you a quick overview of what we're doing in safety and security. We do believe that if our kids have to worry about safety, they can't learn. So we're doing everything we can to make their environment safe so that they can learn in our schools. Obviously, we have a mission statement to provide a safe and orderly learning environment and do everything we can to keep our kids safe in school and through school. We do that by partnering with local law enforcement and using technology. Our office is comprised of about 220 safety and security assistants. We provide safety and security for approximately 198 schools within the district, more than 200 facilities total, 16,000 employees in Prince George's County, and more than 130,000 students. To do that, we've looked at state standards and what we're doing throughout the state. I meet with the security directors throughout the state of Maryland, and we see what they're doing, and we try to ensure that we're not just doing what they do, but somewhat ahead of them. We're trying to take the lead in a lot of different areas. We have approximately 220 safety and security assistants, and we have 56 safety and security counselors. They are sworn individuals. They do have arrest powers in Prince George's County. Every member of our safety and security staff is required to go through some basic minimum training. That training through the Maryland Center for School Safety includes de-escalation training, disability and diversity awareness, maintaining a positive school climate, constructive interactions with students, implicit bias training, how to get into a classroom, principles of effective learning, understanding intellectual and developmental disabilities, working collaboratively with school administrators, and normative adolescent behaviors. So we do everything we can to provide a minimum base for people that have never had anything to do with safety, security, or law enforcement. We want everybody to come in with an understanding of what needs to be done. And then there is continuing education training every year that's done. Every year we look at the incidents that occur within the school, and based upon that, we determine if there needs to be a shift in staff. Some of the shifts may come as a result of vacancies, leave, shortages, or the number of incidents that are occurring at the school. Based upon a review of our data, last year we added additional personnel to Bowie High School, Charles Flowers, Henry Wise, High Point, Northwestern Potomac, and Suitland High School. Certain schools we've determined that we need to have a minimum number of individuals at that school because of the number of incidents. So if there's a shortage at one school, we will pull from another school to cover that vacancy. We also have a safety office that's within my department. We are required to ensure that the school district completes its drills. There is a mandatory reverse evacuation drill, earthquake drill, severe weather drill, shelter-in-place drill, quarterly lockdown drill. So these things have to be done, and we track all of those things in the safety office. We also work with staff in our schools to ensure that they have certain training. We have an AED program, artificial external defibrillator program. We have them in every school. We maintain, the safety officers in charge of ensuring that they're properly maintained. If they are deployed and need to be replaced, we do that. We also assist with training. One of the things we've also done in the school system, and not every other school system has done it, is we put bleed stop kits in every one of our schools. So each one of our schools in the same space as the AED has a bleed stop kit, and we ensure that they are up to snuff. Some of them have expiration dates, some of them do not. So we monitor the expiration dates. If they're used or they expire, we make sure that they're replaced. Recently, we've added 2 positions, 2 safe passage coordinators. They will start on March 24th, is the scheduled start date. One will be assigned to the northern area schools, and one will be assigned to southern area schools. They will investigate safety concerns that come in through our transportation resolution system. They will be required to conduct their investigation and provide a response to the transportation department. And that will go to the citizen requesting the service. They will also be required to coordinate with local and state agencies to address concerns. There are a lot of things that, issues that come up as it relates to school safety and pedestrian safety that are completely out of our control. However, we do have contacts in the police department, State Highway Administration, Department of Public Works, and we will ensure that they receive that information and ask them for updates as to how they plan to address it. Again, the goals are very simply put to ensure pedestrian safety at the time of school construction. So one of the things that we're doing now that was not done before is we are meeting with our developers when they're building the schools. So we're looking at some very basic things, and we're using the concept of crime prevention through environmental design. And we're looking at those things that we can do in our environment to make our schools safer. A simple example would be if we have a crosswalk that goes across a parking lot, instead of just having a crosswalk in the parking lot, we raise the crosswalk. This will require the cars to slow down. It's very simple. It's not much work for the developer, but it enhances safety. We also want to look at a unified template for how we address the issues. We get a complaint about safety for young people walking to school. We want to make sure that we have a unified method of investigating those complaints. So we're working on that. We're going to work with the Department of Public Works and Transportation to look at what the tools that they, and the identifiers that they use to address these things. We will be scheduling proactive agency coordination meetings. We meet with Public Works now once a month. They have a group that is looking at pedestrian fatalities, and we're part of that group. So we're going to insert our safe passage coordinators into those programs, but right now, the safety office, myself, and Mr. Ruff are coordinating, handling those meetings. We also have a compliance section within there to ensure that we are maintaining certain things within the school. For instance, we have hazardous chemicals that are stored in the school. All the science science and chemistry classrooms that have certain things, expiration dates, are they properly stored? We look at all those things and make sure that we're in compliance in those areas. We're also looking at safety enhancements throughout the school district. One of them that we successfully implemented was the metal detectors. All of the high schools, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but we are looking at different areas: metal detectors, vape sensors, AI-capable cameras, radios, and emergency notification systems. We, in 24-25 school year, I'm sorry, 23-24, we installed metal detectors in all of our high schools and 10 of our middle schools and academies. So we have 162 security enhancements deployed throughout the district. We have the ability to, if there's an incident at a school, to temporarily move them to a school. If we have an athletic event where we're concerned about safety, we can use the metal detectors for that. So we do have everybody that's trained. All the high schools have personnel that are trained on how to use the devices. And right now, we're reviewing the data to see if we need to make any adjustments. Cameras. All of our schools have cameras. We're in the process now of overhauling some of our camera systems in our older schools. As we do that, we are moving all of our cameras to AI-capable cameras. Right? We have not flipped the switch on any AI capabilities as far as facial recognition or anything like that, but we do anticipate at some point we may be doing that. Okay. So we are, as we upgrade our camera systems, that's where we're going. Every year we look at CIP funding. So for 2026, we have a plan of the schools that we plan to do those massive overhauls and target that funding. This year, we received a $1.1 million grant from the Maryland Center for School Safety to upgrade security systems, and we've targeted 6 schools, and Potomac High School was included in that funding. The PowerPoint? Okay, thank you. It's not moving. It's stuck, but I could still, I have a.
Will the slide advance, or is it possible to advance it, or?
if
Okay,
I-
very good. We'll just
and
continue.
I have one too.
Here. I have it
Okay.
right here.
Yep, I've got it. One of the things that we're also piloting is an emergency alerting system. We have 3 schools in Prince George's County that have a very high population of deaf and hard of hearing students. So when we make the announcements over the intercom system, they can't hear them. So what we're doing is we're planning to pilot an emergency alerting system in those 3 schools, and it's going to include beacons, lights, and other things so that they can know exactly what's going on. Then at some point, we'd like to look at what we're doing at other schools and make a determination as to where we need to expand that program to. One of the things we've also done is added a liaison officer to focus on drugs, guns, and gangs in our schools. What we find is that if there's an incident that occurs, a large fight, there may be a gang nexus to it. So what I have him doing After every incident like that, he will deploy to the school. If there's a gun recovered, he'll deploy to that school. If there are drugs recovered, he'll deploy to that school, and he will investigate to determine what needs to be done as far as partnering with law enforcement, or what can we do better to prevent something like that from happening in the future. So we've done that. We're working on that. Every school also has a visitor management system. Anyone entering the school is required to produce identification. It is then scanned and automatically checked against the sex offender registration database and other crimes to determine whether or not that person should be allowed in the school. And if they do not meet the criteria, they can be turned away. One of the things that we're doing as we deal with the federal issues, we've come to a place where we need to have a process in place to address any issues with the Immigration, Customs, and Enforcement Division. So we have reached out to the director of the Maryland office. We have established a line of contact. We have any issues, we can reach out to them and ask them exactly what's going on. We also have included our general counsel. So if there are any concerns regarding that, they have a point of contact. They can reach out to them immediately. Yes, sir.
Just for, I think, accessibility, if we could just say the slide number as you're going through it for those that are following
Okay.
along, that might be helpful.
So I'm sorry, I'm on slide 20. So as a part of our practice, we've established a protocol. If someone comes to one of our schools and there is a concern about what they actually want, why they're there, our general counsel will guide them as to what needs to be done and what actions need to be taken. In addition to that, we've established a point of contact with the Maryland Director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement. So we have a question about any operation that's occurring, we can reach out to them also. Additionally, the Prince George's County Police Department is being notified if ICE is doing an operation in the county. So if we can't get ICE, we can contact the police department and they will tell us exactly what's going on if there's a concern. There's been several incidents where people have called stating that it was ICE when it wasn't ICE. It was actually the police department doing an operation. And the last slide I'll cover is the data. Dr. Coleman talked about it. Because of our clear and mesh backpack policy, our security enhancements, we're seeing a significant reduction in contraband coming into the schools. The schools that we have installed the metal detectors, we've not had one firearm enter those schools that we're aware of. We've had a few that were stopped at the door because the kids attempted to come through the devices, and we're seeing outside of the school, but none of them have actually made it into the school. So we think that those things are working for us. We're seeing significant reductions in narcotics coming into the school. We're seeing reductions in vaping pens, knives, all those things we're seeing significant reductions in. And then lastly, just talk about the structure of the office. Again, I'm the director, Gary Cunningham. I have a coordinating supervisor, Mrs. Mary Outlaw. We have two compliance officers assigned to the department. One of them is Mr. Elder and Mr. Ruff, who's also overseeing our safety office. And then we have an internal investigative section. We have a security systems supervisor. And currently we have 3 field operations supervisors, and we plan on filling the other 2 vacancies. That is all I have for my presentation, and I'll take any questions.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Cunningham, Chief Coleman, and Superintendent House. Board members, do you have any questions? And just by the way of like the process, we're gonna have 2.5 minutes per round. There'll be 2 rounds, and then we'll vote for a 3rd round if necessary. All right, so we're gonna start with Board Member Brown.
Thank you, Vice Chair Briggs, and thank you to the director for this presentation. I'm a Bowie High School mom as well as a Charles Herbert Flowers mom, and so forgive me if I'm coming from the mom's perspective in this. I am concerned about Bowie High School because that is also one of my schools. One of the things that you mentioned is that you all do de-escalating training. What does that look like? The community right now is a little nervous about the recent incidents, but can you kind of share what that looks like in your training so that we can start lowering the incidents that happen in the high school?
The training that goes on for the Maryland Center for School Safety is a little different than the de-escalation that occurs in the school. So in the Maryland Center for School Safety training, we are taught to mediate disputes. So we have several individuals that are involved in a dispute, attempt to get to the bottom of it, find out exactly what's going on, and try to mediate and find out if there's any common ground. In our school system, Student Services handles most of the fight incidents, so they will be the ones to follow up when there's a fight within the school.
So when I think of de-escalation, I think of taking care of the situation prior to it happening. And I'm also thinking from a teacher perspective as well, because we've had a lot of teachers who've tried to step in and have been injured because of it. And so that was where, to me, the de-escalation, like maybe teachers should be trained in the same fashion that security does it, because that would probably help assist rather than jumping out there and, you know, basically becoming very vulnerable to the situation. So can you kind of talk to us about what that looks like, even for teachers to get that training?
We'll do a two-part answer, if you would talk about the training component, but you touched on a great point in that the safety and security of our schools is really everyone's responsibility, right? And so we work hard in the department to make certain that the safety and security teams that are assigned to each school are working in concert with the school administration, and therefore providing opportunities for de-escalation, that security really, they're not that first line with respect to that work. We have, if I think about some of the PGCEA positions that are available, peer mediators that can be assigned to particular schools, that is their primary function, is to try to support de-escalation. We also have our professional school counselors who receive regular training through the Department of Student Services that assist with running groups and de-escalation, how to manage stress, and a number of other areas. So it's a collective kind of response that we need in order to provide a conducive environment for students.
Excellent. And I did, because I know I'm running out of time, my last question had to deal with traffic patterns at high schools. I know Bowie High School is in a vulnerable spot as well. I did contact the city of Bowie, but I didn't know if you all do the traffic pattern research, or does the state do the traffic pattern research? What does that look like?
So 450 is a state highway, so it's a state highway administration. We partner with them. We have contacts in the state highway administration if there's a specific concern. And a lot of these concerns are not new, so they're aware of them. And what we do is we ask them if they're aware of the concern. If they are, is there any update and what they've done? So it is a partnership.
All right, thank you so much. And we will have a second round if necessary. Board Member Walker?
Hi, Director Cunningham. I have a number of questions, so I'm going to shoot them at you, okay? The first one is, can you talk to us about the vapor sensors, and if they are in every school, how are they placed?
So we did a pilot at High Point High School. High Point High School last year had a significant issue with overdoses. And what we found is they were going to the bathrooms or certain areas within the school, and they were using drugs. So what we did was we took 10 vape detectors. We put them in what the principal identified as hotspots throughout the school, and we saw a significant reduction in the number of vaping incidents and overdoses that were occurring at that school. Bowie High School also purchased vape detectors, and they have seen a reduction in the incidents that they're having. So we are looking, turn over to Dr. Coleman. One of the things I'd like to do is at some point expand that program throughout the district, so we're working on that piece.
And to Director Cunningham's point, based on the success from the pilot at High Point High School, we did determine that it was worth it to expand it to our other high schools. We initially, in the fall, applied for the Maryland School Safety Grant, the one that we awarded the $1.1 million, that was really initially around vape detectors. Unfortunately, the state did not support us utilizing that funding for that purpose, so we pivoted to purchase cameras because we know we needed to upgrade those as well. But as we identify additional funding sources, we are certainly planning to move forward with vape detectors in our high schools, our secondary schools.
Okay, so they are not purchased by the school, they'll be purchased by PGCPS and then installed in the school? That's
So
what
we're
I
going to
think
look
I
at
heard.
all available funding sources.
Okay.
One of them that we'd identified in the fall was the Maryland Center for School Safety Grant.
Yep, I remember.
But without that funding, we'll look at other options.
Okay, thank you. The rollout plan, whenever you have it, would be amazing. There's a number of schools, and I'm definitely going to need a second round, but there's a number of schools desiring safety resource officers and the lack thereof. So I recognize there's a shortage, but I wanted you to be able to talk to us about the strategy of attracting, retaining, and then placing. I don't think you'll have enough time this time, but that's one question, especially in placing and how you go about prioritization. And I'll ask my other question so you can be ready. The other one was around its liaison officers. I was just wondering how many of those we had, because it sounds like they sit in a central location and you deploy. Then I saw update of security and camera systems. They will be updated with new AI, but what's the targeted age before you update?
Great, thank you so much.
I'm sorry, what was the last part of your question?
Yeah, they get the age of the old cameras before you install the new cameras. Okay, thank you.
All right.
So,
Oh, no,
can we-
you
we'll
can
come-
answer when you come
Okay,
back,
we'll come
that's
back in a
fine.
second round. We're going to go to Board Member Boozer Strother.
All right, thank you so much, and thank you both so much for the presentation. I think a lot of my questions probably would have required student services to be sitting next to you, because I have some similar questions. Well, first, the systems are clearly working. Northwestern High School is the primary large high school in District 3, so I can see that evidence as a board member and as a parent, and I want to thank you. One thing I've been thinking about is how, Maryland school safety, and I could see sort of this cultural shift towards sort of social emotional learning and in the way the security team can be the first point of contact for students, and there's a kindness and a welcoming and a greeting method that's being utilized now rather than a scolding method, and I've witnessed students who get there after the bell. That's when this happens. But they may go down the hallway and a school-based administrator might have a little different kind of take about that late arrival, so you have two different kind of cultures happening in a building, and I was wondering how that's being reconciled and how you keep continuing towards best practices in that area. And then the others, are you tracking students who depart from the school building from the multiple doors, and how we know how much of a problem or not a problem is that students are departing the building and not in class? And I imagine attendance is one way, but how is security working on that? Thanks.
So thank you so much, Board Member Boozer Struthers, and thank you for acknowledging the effectiveness of our safety and security enhancement devices. We honestly have been leaders in this region. We've had Frederick County, Baltimore County, Montgomery County all visit to understand how we've implemented and what we can do, what they can do from those best practices, what they can learn. So with respect to the best practices, kind of the consistency of how we're engaging with children, I think you're right. It's just a matter of partnership. Each of our safety and security teams and the school administrations must work together. And that way we could have a more unified approach to how we support children when they aren't meeting our expectations.
Okay, anticipate there will be a desire for a second round there, so we can come back for more. But we're going to go to Board Member Anderful.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this report. It's really helpful. Some of the questions that were asked earlier are ones that I have as well. So I imagine that in the second round, maybe we'll come back to them. So I'll wait to see if they're addressed then. But one, with regard to our SROs and just our security placement within schools. I think one of the things I heard you say was that the number of incidents is one of the criteria that you use to determine placement. Are there any other things that you use to determine placement? I'm assuming things like size of school,
Absolutely.
other things would play into that. Could you speak to how you choose to place security within certain schools?
You're absolutely correct. Size does matter. So the larger schools that have the higher number of incidents will get the larger staff. And then we also look at the minimum staffing levels. The way the school is configured, certain schools have annexes, it's 2 buildings that need to be covered, so we need to take all those things into consideration. But if you have a school that has a very low number of incidents, it's hard for me to deploy a large number of personnel there. So although we want to maintain the minimum staffing at every school, we know that the minimum staffing at a large school with a lot of incidents is going to be higher than the minimum staffing of a smaller school with very few incidents.
Okay, so if I can just follow up to that and give a somewhat specific example. So if a school had, let's say, 10, security officers, maybe coming in different forms, right? I know my time is up. And then they lose 2, would you replace them if they said that they needed them? Or would you say, consider some of the criteria and then say we're not going to replace them?
In a perfect world, if I had people out on leave or sick, I would move people in there all the time. But we don't have a bench, so to speak. So if a school that has had very few incidents has somebody out for a day or 2, then I may not replace that person immediately. But if they experience an incident or they have a need that they expect a gang fight or some other, then yes, I will deploy personnel there, but I may not do it just for a routine absence.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Board Member Anderful. We'll go to Board Member Moss.
Yeah, thank you all for today's presentation, super helpful. For this first round, I'm going to combine some topics. Bradbury Heights Elementary School, I probably should have reached out to you all about this, I didn't. But what is the process for getting speed bumps at a school? I think that might be the county more so than us. So would love to hear a little bit more about that. I did reach out to the county because I thought it was the county's role. And then crossing guards. We, in District 7, we just don't have enough crossing guards. I know we don't shoulder the full responsibility for crossing guards. That is a shared responsibility with the county. And the last thing I'd like to ask in this round of questioning is relative to my other colleagues. I think I've asked this question when I first joined the board about Benjamin Stoddard and where it is in line to actually receive the same security enhancements that we have over at Drew Freeman. So those would be my 3 questions for this round.
So the first question is, as it relates to speed bumps, if it's a county road, Department of Public Works and Transportation does what's called a traffic study, and they determine whether or not they'll put traffic calming measures on a street. So they make that decision. One of the things that we're doing with the Safe Passage Program is partnering with them. If we have requests of that nature, we can report that request to them, and they can respond to it. They may have already done it. What we find oftentimes is that people have already made the request, they've already done the research, and it may not warrant those devices. They just may not have given everybody the message. All right. The second one's crossing guards. The police department is working on staffing crossing guards. We do not staff crossing guards. It is a function of the police department. There is a shortage there. I know they've done some things to incentivize the positions, but that is the police department's. And when we see a need, we will make them aware of it, and sometimes they can move personnel around to cover it, and sometimes they just can't because of shortages. And the last thing was adding enhancements to other schools. We're looking at all the data. So the schools that have it it was based, some of it on location, some of the number of incidents, firearms or weapons recovered, and the ones that don't have it, we're looking at all the data because we received several requests. But one of the biggest issues that we find with the security enhancements is you have to leave somebody physically there to monitor it. That means that you don't have people to move around the building, to be in other places. So staffing is an issue as it relates to the security enhancements.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Board Member Goins-McCants.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vice Chair, and thank you both so much for this presentation. Like my colleague, Board Member Boozer Struthers, most of my questions are more so related to our student services, but in the vein of some of the things we've talked about today, it says that our Safe Passage coordinators are supposed to coordinate to address certain concerns, and we've come up several times about the traffic, and I've heard about, if it's a state road or if it's a county road, but specifically about how our traffic patterns in and out of the school are affecting the surrounding communities and the safety of our traffic patterns. What is being done currently, and if we have areas where we know that there are problems, how do we basically advocate to get that looked at differently?
Yeah, thank you for that. So all fall and starting last July, your board member, Ms. Boozer Struthers, as well as our office and myself, were involved in a school pedestrian safety task force to develop recommendations that are focused on the areas that you're talking about. And they developed a policy document of recommendations that we can work with Department of Public Works and Transportation, the Police Department, and other municipal agencies to address the concerns that we see. The Safe Passage coordinators that are coming online at the end of this month that's their primary responsibility, to really look at those recommendations, look at the work that we need done in our schools, and respond to those challenges with our community partners.
So I guess with that, how do you get that process started? Like, since we only have 2, and I think one of my other board members had this question, but since we only have 2 for the whole county, how do we get connected with those people?
It's actually already started. So our safety office has always been the point of contact for pedestrian safety issues. They will contact the police department, Public Works, State Highway Administration, and ask them what they're doing. And we can provide updates and provide those back to the board.
I'm running out of time, but I meant specifically, like, if there is an issue or issues happening now, how do we address them now? And I know I'm running out of time, but I'll come back.
Okay.
Okay, seeing no other questions for round 1, we're going to move to round 2, and I'm going to start with Board Member Boozer Struther.
Yeah, thank you so much. I had put on my light to start to talk about the work group as well that Dr. Coleman began to describe. So on the County Council website, if you just search School Pedestrian Safety Work Group, you'll see the convenings, you'll see the discussion, the video discussions, and the documents of the work. And that will give you really good sort of framework of how a board member fits into this process, which didn't exist at all until this pedestrian work group. So that was council members Fisher, Olson, and Watson, who put through the county bill to get that done. And one thing that Director Cunningham did with Director Baldwin in Transportation was on the Transportation Resolution System form, you now can get it in a tracker, right? You could report it into our internal PGCPS trackers, like a point of reference for PGCPS's role. And then there are now coordinated meetings, and Dr. Coleman, correct me if I'm wrong, how often your coordinated meetings are about once a month, if not more frequently, where the critical issues are brought together. And the other thing is, we learned through this process that DPW actually received this big grant to work on at least 10 or 12 of our schools. And so we should be able to get a report out on those schools, which board members are, your schools, and then you could see if some of this work is already in process. So we learned a lot through this process, that we all cared about what's happening with school pedestrian safety, but we never had a coordinated effort, and now we do. So those are some tips, and I'd be happy to continue to work with everyone offline.
Okay, thank you for that, Board Member Boozer Strother, and noted. And then we'll go to Board Member Walker next.
Thank you. I'll give you the time to answer those questions. If you need me to repeat them, I will.
I think I have them here. They,
One was while he's looking,
let's make
one was
good use of-
strategies
okay, you got
for recruiting and retention of safety and security officers.
Yes.
And the
No-
other was around upgrading camera systems.
Yeah, I'll ask them. So there's a number of schools that's asking for resource officers, and I recognize there's a shortage. So the first question is, how do you prioritize the placement of those once we attract and hopefully retain them? That's the first one. We're going to go quick because there's like 3 questions.
okay, so again, size, number of incidents, and sometimes the location will determine the number of staffing that we put there. The school resource officer program is managed by the police department. The safety and security personnel are managed by my office.
So we, help me with that though. So when we go out and we look for safety resource officers in our school, do they go through the police department or through you?
No, so school resource officer is a Prince George's County police officer that's assigned to
Yeah.
a school by the police department. Safety and security personnel are managed by me in the security office. So when we hire those people, we determine based upon the size of the school, the data, and the number of incidents that occur there, how we deploy them.
Okay, how do I help you attract people? Is there the website, can people go apply today if they're interested in those positions?
We just did a job fair, and we fill our vacancies pretty quickly, but we also have, because of what we do, oftentimes we have a lot of injuries. So I may have, my authorized personnel is about 260 people, but because of injuries, sickness, things of that nature, I may have anywhere from 10 to 15% that are out on a regular basis.
Okay. For the liaison officers, how many of those do we have?
We have one. We have
Oh.
one that is an investigator. Again, whenever there's an incident, gun, drugs, or gangs, he deploys and follows up.
Oh, okay. Are you keeping up with the pace of the complaints?
Yes.
With the one, oh, okay.
Yes.
Then, that's done. The next is update of security and camera systems. I was wondering, at what age do you replace them to the new AI system?
So that is ongoing work, because if you can imagine, we have over 200 schools. Some schools have 200 cameras in them or more. And so there isn't a cutoff for when we would transition them from one to the next. We're really, quite frankly, trying to make certain that all of them are digital and not analog, right? And then as we replace them, we're looking at the
Got it.
appropriate technology that could include being AI capable.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Board Member Brown.
Thank you so much. You mentioned that you all track drills. What metrics do you use to track the drills to ensure that they're actually doing it?
Every school is required to do drills quarterly, annually, and monthly. So they are required to conduct the drill and then notify my office that it's done. We have a person that's assigned to look at who's done the drills and who hasn't, and then we send them an email first, and then we send them a letter of noncompliance if they're not in compliance.
Got it. Okay, great. One of the things that you also mentioned was the bleed stop kit. I don't think I've ever heard of a bleed stop kit. So can you kind of explain what that is?
So it is a first aid bandage, and some of them have blood coagulants. And what they found is that in mass shootings, a lot of the victims died as a result of bleeding out. So the bleed stop kit is specifically designed to coagulate the blood, stop them from bleeding.
Excellent. And you mentioned that you all do apply for grants. Do you all look at public safety committees within the district and do you guys apply to, with those grants that they offer as well? Because possibly, like, for example, I'm just going to use Bowie because I live there, but Bowie Public Safety might have a grant. Would that grant go strictly to Bowie schools, or is it distributed through all of Prince George's County?
So I actually met with Bowie City Hall and the folks down there. They were talking about a grant specifically for Bowie High School. They would not want to use their funds in any other part of the county other than Bowie High School. So I'm not aware of the grant. I know there was some discussion about safety enhancements at the high school and schools in the city of Bowie.
Okay, And would you like for me to follow up? How does that look like? Are we allowed to do that? Because I don't want it to be a situation where if Bowie gets money, we're supposed to distribute it because, what's the process? I think that's the best way to say it.
I would say yes, please pursue it. We also have a grants office that can ensure that we're staying in line with the requirements of the grant and also of the school system.
Perfect. And I think that's it. I'll use my time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Board Member Brown. Board Member Anderful.
Yes, thank you. So someone as a follow-up to what I mentioned earlier. So some of these questions I'm having are a result of conversations I've had with Duval High School. So I know that, they've lost a few, and again, actually, I'm not sure if they're SROs, if they're SSCs, this is new to me. So, but they've lost some staff and they are wanting to, have the staff replaced because of the sheer size of the school. And although they may have been doing well, maybe with the number of incidents, overall, they are, significantly strapped, right, with the size of the school and the need. So I just want to name that. But I think aside from that, one of the questions I do have specifically then is, this difference between SROs and SSCs. Like, how are you all coordinating with police department? Is this something where how many SROs there are, and then that's also then informing how many SSCs you're placing? And then I think specifically, somewhat correlated there again, is with the Safe Passage program. So I understand there's some things, of course, that are within your control and others that aren't. I know there are a number of schools that have issues with gangs or things that are happening outside of school, with some gang members, for example, like loitering around the premises of the building. Is that something that you all are able to support, or does that then kind of, again, go outside of your locus of control where you then need to coordinate with the police?
So we do coordinate very well with the police department. I attend the crime meeting that they have every Thursday morning when I can, and we talk about issues in the county to include what's going on in the schools and how we can be of assistance to them and how they can be of assistance to us. They currently have 21 police officers that are assigned to our schools in the SRO program. They have 3 sergeants and 1 lieutenant. We coordinate, if there are issues at the school, we coordinate with them immediately through the SRO program. The leads in the school will talk to the SRO, and if they need additional staffing, they also have it's called an adequate coverage grant that they're using if there needs to be a supplement of patrol officers beyond what their complement is for their SROs. So we do work very well with them as it relates to incidents and coordination. As far as things that occur outside of the school, if we obviously receive information about something that's going to occur in the community, we share that with them. They share that with the district investigators, and we work with them on those issues too.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Moss.
I want to use the first few seconds of my time I probably need to turn it on. I want to use the first bit of my time to slide 22 for folks who are online can reference this. I don't think it's shared enough that of the 18 broad categories, when we look at incident types, 17 of them have large reductions, and the only one that increased was by 1 incident. So while that percentage looks large, we are seeing tremendous efforts around this. So if any of our school safety personnel, our resource officers are watching, and any parents are watching, we are making tremendous strides to be able to do that. And I personally want to thank them for their work to make sure our schools are safe. As someone who was a school principal, I understand how difficult that work is, and to bring these infractions and incidents down is real work. So thank you. But I do have one question. We've had an incident, and we don't have to go into too great a detail, around altercations between faculty and students. What kind of work do we do to train substitute personnel to make sure they know how to engage with our students and keep them safe? And then the second question I want to ask is the way in which we balance school hardening practices and also making sure that it's not militarized. For example, are we taking the metal detectors down so schools don't look like public prisons when kids walk in them? So those are the 2 questions that I actually have.
I'll take the metal detector first. We don't take them down. It is counterproductive if we put them up when they come in and then take them down and allow free access to the school without checking them. And they know that. They watch our practices. They know what we do. So our practice is to do the best we can to ensure that all the doors are secured and everybody funnels through the metal detectors. And it doesn't work if we take them down once everybody's back in, because some schools, people move in and out all day long. So that we do keep them up.
And we added to that we put door buzzers so that we could hear an alarm if students are trying to access anything other than that main point of entry or exit that we are looking for. So we don't want to harden our schools to the point where they aren't attractive, but at the same time, it is making a difference in making them safer.
And Board Member Moss, I'd like to add as well, when we, on the front end, we're taking a look at the different types of equipment that were available to purchase. Director Cunningham was able to bring in some products for us to take a close look at on the cabinet. And we tried to go with products that were not so institutionalized. So if you had a chance to see the product that's in our schools, it's essentially 2 poles. And they don't look like what you would remember from Lean on Me or some of the movies that showed old school metal detectors. So it's better technology, it's aesthetically pleasing, and one wouldn't necessarily recognize it.
Okay. Board Member Goins-McCants.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. My question was also around the data. There's a new category here, it looks like, I'm assuming is new for school year 24-25, disruption classroom school environment, because there's no data from the previous year. What type of incidents are we including in that, and where would they have been classified last year?
And it actually would not have been classified last year, before you jump in, because it was a category that was recently added. We worked closely with both our teacher union organizations, listening to educators out there in town halls, and this was one of the things that they felt was necessary. And I think it attributes to the data going in the right direction. So this was a result of us listening and really making a modification. I believe years ago, this actually was a category and it was pulled out. So now it's back, and that's why we don't have any reflective data from the previous year.
Got it. So from that understanding, these are completely new situations that previously wouldn't have been a referral.
Very well could be the case in many, many cases.
Thank you so much, Superintendent House. And then the other question about it is, in the system that you all are currently using now, are people able to select multiple things? Like, is this data referencing like one incident for each count? Or can I say this was it can be a classroom disruption and it can be a threat or an attack?
Wherever the data falls is where we track it. So it can be multiple offenses in one incident.
And are you able to tell us what specific system it is that this is coming from?
This is our SEER system. The security personnel, use that to track every incident.
So this is not like if a write-up happens in a school, this is completely just the security?
Yes.
Got it. Those are all my questions. Thank you all.
All right, thank you so much. Before we entertain the idea of a third round, which I don't think anyone necessarily looked like they had interest in, I did want to just take a moment of personal privilege to ask a question of my own. And this was around mediators and restorative justice. And I'm thinking back to 2022-23, when we had a number of Afghan students come into the county. And I know particularly at Parkdale High School, which is in my district, we had a few incidents with students. There was an apartment complex, and there was some gang activity and some clashes. And there was a mediator that I believe the high school had to come and kind of support off the school grounds, next steps there. I'm just curious if you all do those things, and to what extent do you have mediators, restorative justice practices, et cetera?
Mediation, we would work in concert with the administration and the school support team student support team in order to engage in any sort of mediation. So in other words, we would have our security team, at times, they would mediate issues, right? Because they may be the first responders, they get the students into a secure location where they are safe and try to help them talk it out. But at the same time, you would also have follow-up with their professional school counselors to try to come up with some type of contract or a parent notification so that we can ensure that the behavior sticks. So in a schoolhouse, it works best when you have every available adult, quite frankly, supporting the work, and that could be security or the student support team.
And I saw you thinking, Mr. Cunningham, not sure if you had anything to, okay, great. Okay, board members, if there's an interest for a third round, okay, I see a few lights. So if there are any objections to a third round, say aye. Okay, so we're gonna move forward with a third round. And I'm gonna go with board member Brown first.
Yes, thank you. So my district has primarily elementary schools. I only have 2 middle schools and 1 high school, or 2 high schools. One is non-traditional, but primarily elementary. And so I know that some schools have vestibules and some schools do not have vestibules. Elementary schools tend to be the most vulnerable population, and I'm curious as to what that looks like as far as security measures are concerned. Are we looking to put vestibules? Is that a part of the CIP plan possibly? Can we talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, thank you so much. We're looking at a number of options. Actually, earlier today, in addition to, with our CIP, ways in which we can harden our elementary schools to make them safer. We're also engaging in a task force that Director Cunningham has started in collaboration with school administration, with our Office of General Counsel, to bring in different vendors to understand what resources are available to support our elementary schools. In today's presentation that we attended, it was an alert system where each employee would wear a lanyard that they could press, depending on what the incident was. Maybe they press it 1 time for an internal incident, they press it 7 times if it's an active shooter situation, and it would call and alert the authorities to support. So we are engaging in a number of different vendor opportunities to understand what the landscape is, what's available, and in addition to CIP, looking at what we can bring in as far as resources to support those schools.
And then for future schools, we're working with our capital folks who do the construction and looking at things that can be built into the structure. As they build the schools, instead of trying to retrofit it 5 years from now, build it now, that way you'll have it. And then, as Dr. Coleman said, we're also looking at not just alert systems, but target hardening. So my background is in law enforcement. One of the things we're looking at is crime prevention through environmental design. Again, it's looking at the environment, doing everything you can to improve that environment so you don't have to have security personnel there, and the environment will keep them safer.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go to board member Walker.
Thank you so much. And you answered one of them for new construction. Thank you already. I did see on the cameras page, it says there will be monitoring by safety and administration staff. And I was wondering, is that an in process, or for the cameras that's there, are we continuously monitoring them?
So what I try to do is replace manpower with technology. If you've got a school with 200 cameras, instead of trying to be in 200 places, use your personnel to monitor the cameras. If you see something going on, deploy your personnel based upon that. So it's a philosophy I'm trying to push out to my folks. They're not quite getting it. They want to keep roaming around, and they're not using the technology as well as they should. But they should be using the cameras today. They're there. They work. It's a force multiplier.
Oh, that's great. The other piece I was going to ask is on the data sheet that's on that last slide, how often do we update that?
It's updated monthly or
Excellent.
as required. Yeah,
Okay.
As requested, rather.
Perfect. And where do I go to see that?
You'd have to see me.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Also, since I have time, I I did send you an email, and I saw that you wrote back, I just haven't read it yet. But I think, understanding not only safety incidents within our districts, but as well as where staffing shortages exist, would be really helpful to be able to at least frame with our schools and our constituents, like, hey, this is what the situation is, so we can tell the whole narrative, as well as if there is hiring opportunities, where they are, and how constituents can really help with that. So I'd love to be able to work with you on what does that look like, at least to craft the story inside of my district to help with what that is, and then be able to also, when you have hiring every month inside my newsletter, I have hiring for bus drivers or for teachers, because I know where to get that information. But if I'll add in for our security officers as well, because that's also important. So I think help looks like, how can the board be helpful in getting out the narrative and the messaging so that we can keep our scholars safe? Does that make sense?
And we can actually have communication to actually provide, because we've started a specialized campaign specifically targeting our federal partners that may or may not be out of work. We've been to several job fairs most recently, and that includes jobs that fall under Mr. Cunningham's. But we can provide some of that information to you. Yeah, good.
And Superintendent House, if I could also add, under Superintendent House and also with the board's support, we're making that happen right now. This current FY25 budget is already an increase in the number of safety and security positions, both SSAs and SSCs, over the previous year, and that has been extended into the FY26 budget that's been proposed, in addition to the safe passage coordinators that have also been added. So we're making material investments in the human resource needs of safety and security services.
Excellent, thank you.
All right, we're going to go to Board Member Anderful.
Thank you. A few quick questions about the data provided on 22. First question, so I'm seeing that this data is a point in time, and that you're capturing the first part of the school year, right, so about 5 months. Just curious, is it a trend to see some of these data points actually increase in the second part of the school year? Is that something that you've seen? And then my second question, somewhat in line with what Board Walker, so it's a request actually, with what Board Member Walker requested. I'd love to see some of this data that disaggregated a bit, if you could provide that. I'm able to make some assumptions, obviously, about some differences potentially in primary versus secondary, and where we see some of these numbers larger in other spaces than others. But I'm curious specifically about my district, and if there's some way that we can disaggregate some of this so I can just have a better sense of what's happening. And I'm sure other board members will be interested in seeing that as well. And then lastly, this point around physical attacks on students and then fighting. So, I'm seeing the percentages here, the percentage changes, but those numbers look to have decreased the most. And so I'm just curious as to why, and also just how we're differentiating between fighting and physical attacks on students. Like, I'm assuming it's just reporting and how we're reporting it, but we'd love to hear more about that.
Okay. As far as what we normally see increase, you will see an increase in fights. You'll see an increase in drug usage as it gets warmer. Kids are outside, so they have the opportunity to do that. So you'll see some increases in those areas. As far as the staffing goes, again, we only have X number of personnel, and we have to put them in the places where we have the highest number of students, the largest number of incidents. And then as far as fighting and assault is if you are not participating. If you and I decide to go outside and we're mutual combatants, that's a fight. If I assault you and you're not a part of the conversation, then that's an assault. So that's how we differentiate between the two.
Okay, so that's just based on then how it's reported, how it's captured. So if someone says it was a fight versus someone saying, nope, you attacked, then that's...
It's not just how it's reported. We have cameras in the schools, so oftentimes we'll review the camera footage and make a determination based upon
Perfect,
the
thank
evidence.
you. That's helpful.
Okay, all right. Board Member Moss.
Just the first one. So the first set of data was comparable July 1st, January 30th, both years, right? Just to make sure we're clear about that. And then we'll get another set of data to look at and to be able to compare this time of the year to last year this time of the year, right? I just want to make sure reading the data in the same way. But I do want to go back to the original question I asked, and that's all I have for the balance of the time. How do we train substitute personnel who are not with us all the time or didn't go through the same training? Do they go through the same training to be able to de-escalate when we're dealing with students? So is there a safety training that substitute teachers or something goes through? Just curious, how do we handle those things?
So we don't have substitute safety and security services staff. So when I'm thinking you're talking about substitute teachers?
Absolutely.
Okay, so that would actually be done through human resources.
And
where
what
they
we can do, Board Member Waltz, we can have human resources to provide what the introductory training looks like for substitute teachers to the entire board.
Okay.
Yep.
That's fine. I'm going to use the balance of my time to one, just for the general public. If you came in last, we get knocked on so much around school safety and security. So I just want to just acknowledge and appreciate the enhancements that we've made. We had a forum with Council Member Orietta, and lots of folks have said, I didn't know PGCPS was doing all of that. And so every opportunity we get, I want to uplift the enhancements that we've been able to do, from our metal detectors, adding additional staffing at Potomac, Suitland, Northwestern, High Point, Wise, Flowers, and Bowie. So, we still have things going on. We want to acknowledge that, but we certainly want to say that we're making the right moves. And I appreciate you acknowledging that this board and this administration moved pretty proactively in the FY26 budget request to add more security personnel to our work. So we certainly have our challenges as a district, but it's certainly comforting to know that this administration is making strides to be able to change what sometimes can seem like a never-ending battle. So I do want to personally thank you all for your leadership in that. I don't think we do it nearly enough in this county. We complain, but we don't thank enough. So I want to take this venue to thank again. Again, just thank you so much. And I'll yield the rest of my time back to the chair.
All right, thank you so much. Board Member Goins-McCants.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I have more of a request than a question at this point. The next time we have this information, is it possible that we could get the Office of Schools and then the, I'm drawing a blank on the.
Dr. Faison.
Yes, Dr. Faison here as well, but not just to talk about our student discipline, but also HR to have those questions be answered in this space. And the other request is there a way that we could get this sent monthly to all board members, or somewhere, to Board Member Walker's point, where we could see it without necessarily having to hound you every time we get a request?
We'll figure it out, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Okay, seeing no other questions, and this is the third round, I just want to throw something in there. I think this is just a comment, but I would love to see, in addition to what Superintendent Howe shared around the communications team and the HR team being involved in some of these things, when we think about the narrative that exists around Prince George's County, and particularly when we're trying to, attract teachers or bus drivers, right? There's this, I think there's a false narrative that there's some sense of violence, or there's, a difference between Montgomery County or others. And I'm making that up, I haven't heard that. But I think this is a good opportunity to lift up those bright spots, the things to say that this is a great county to work in, right? These are ways that we can kind of mesh the two, what's happening with the data there, with actual outcomes that are going to drive teachers, which is a huge need, as we all know. So I'm not speaking anything new, but just wanted to say that as an additional note. With that being said, and because we are on the third round here, we're going to move to adjournment. And I want to thank everyone for joining us for tonight's meeting. To our online viewers, thank you for watching. There being no further business, the time is now 6:17, and the March 13th, 2025 Prince George's County Board of Education work session is adjourned. Thank you all, and have a good night.